It's intriguing because he didn't appear on the injury report at all this year, Peter, with a knee or anything else other than a rest day from time to time. So they better be careful how much they pump up the legend of Tom Brady by talking about him playing with a bad knee, or some people with the Bucs are going to have to make an involuntary contribution to the charity of the NFL's choice.
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't see him the whole year look like anything was wrong with his knee. I was taken by surprise when I heard that. But, look, I don't know what it is. I don't have any idea. But I do think that at age 43, it's probably I don't even want to say intelligent to get cleanup surgery if anything at all is wrong. But I would guess that this has been, over the years, this has kind of been a brewing situation. But I will say about just his health, one of the interesting things looking back on a year ago, and it was, I guess, 13 months ago when he played his last game for the Patriots, and the questions there about his arm strength. And I'll tell you, his arm strength was really very good this year, all the way through the Super Bowl. One of the interesting things that I talked to Clyde Christensen yesterday, the quarterback coach, and he was talking about the same thing that Byron Leftwich told me. It's just too bad we don't have 4 or 5 more games, because of how well we're playing right now, and we just started playing really, really well. And I'm not sure that many of their players would agree. It's a shame that we don't have 4 or 5 more games. I think at the end of a 20-game season or 21, you've had enough.
Yeah, and it was from 7-5 to 8-0. They really did hit their stride after their bye week, after they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, had 2 weeks for the next game, and they went from there. The Tom Brady acquisition, in hindsight, one of the great moves that any team has made in any offseason. The Buccaneers knew what they had. They knew what they wanted, and they went and got it. Here's Bruce Arians speaking to you earlier this week on Brady ultimately being the missing piece to the puzzle for the Buccaneers.
I told him, I said, hey, dude, remember our first conversation? He said, vividly. So you come, we'll win the Super Bowl.
Did you really know?
I knew he was the missing piece because we were so talented last year. And with that young secondary coming on, I knew it could be really, really good defensively, and all we needed was a leader.
Yeah.
And I love Jameis, but Jameis wasn't the guy.
The big concern about Jameis came in December. I remember Arians talking about that last year. December is when the foundation is laid for a championship run. That's when the great quarterbacks step up. That's when Jameis stepped off. That's when Jameis disintegrated. That's when Jameis finished his run to 30 interceptions, and Arians knew at that point, we need better than this if we're going to compete for a championship. So out goes Jameis for a team that was 7-7 going into the final 2 games of the year. In comes Brady on a team that was 7-5 going into the final 4. What happens? December rolls around, and off they go, Peter.
What was so interesting about the pursuit of Tom Brady is that I've come to believe now it's more of who did Tom Brady want? Obviously, I believe he was interested in the Indianapolis Colts. That interest was not reciprocated. I believe the Los Angeles Chargers were interested in him. I don't think he wanted to live out there because of his family situation. And then I think the other thing that will always be sort of this kind of hazy mystery hanging over it, Mike, is how serious was the New Orleans Saints interest? How serious would that interest have been if Drew Brees actually had walked away? Because I believe at the end of last year, that organization believed that Drew Brees was going to walk away after 2019. And then he had time to think about it. And he said, no, I'm gonna stay. But what basically happened, I think, is that story never really had a chance to happen because Brees came back. Now, would it have happened? I don't know. But I do think that Sean Payton, being the quarterback maven that he is, would definitely have at least kicked the tires on that one, Mike.
And the 49ers, the other team that admitted to taking a look at Tom Brady, decided to keep Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady. Not that the 49ers would have gotten back to the Super Bowl and won it if Brady had gone there. They were besieged by injuries this year. But if Brady had gone to the 49ers, the Buccaneers aren't winning the Super Bowl this year, and it quite possibly would have been a Chiefs repeat, Peter. So it just shows you what one domino can do. As we stand on the brink of so many potential dominoes falling this offseason, already the Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff trade that we know about, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, etc. It really makes you wonder who out there has a vision like the one that Bruce Arians had last year, and there's a missing piece that coach or that GM wants, and they'll be the team we're talking about a year from now that made it work.
Mike, I want to keep an eye on the Carolina Panthers. I think that although they love Teddy Bridgewater as a guy, he had a C or C plus season. And I think the Panthers look at that and think they need better at quarterback. Now, will they be able to do better at quarterback? They certainly sniffed around significantly on Matthew Stafford. So I don't think they're out of the equation here to change quarterbacks. And even if they don't, I do think they're going to look into it. The one other team that I think is interesting right now and interesting going forward is Washington, because I think emotionally they feel like they're tied to Alex Smith, and you saw they signed Taylor Heineke for 2 years this week, which I think was a really smart decision on their part. But the question is, they have a defense that's ready to win now. They have to look at their own organization, their own team, and say, do we think that Alex Smith is good enough to play deep in the playoffs? The emotional story is one thing, but is his ability good enough to play deep in the playoffs? Now, they may decide that it is, but I'm going to be watching Washington as well.
You caught my attention earlier when you talked about the desire on the part of some Buccaneers to continue the season, even though they're at the top of the mountain. They planted the flag. They grabbed the trophy. They threw it from one boat to another. Here's Byron Leftwich explaining to you his wish that the season actually had gone on 4 games longer.
I just felt confident in, what we had as a game plan, who we are, and what we become as a team. It was really about the more confidence in the team on I've been around a lot of good football teams, and where we've been at the past 2, 3, 4 weeks, we've been getting better every week, and the tough part for us, we'll be so much better a month from now. We was kind of wishing that we could have 4 more games to play to just keep repping, to just keep, seeing how far we can take this thing.
That's a scary thought regarding where they may be next year. They did struggle at times. They did limp into their bye week. They come out of the gates hot. They come out of the gates ready. They get the Saints maybe early in the season and get a chance to show that last year's sweep in the regular season was kind of a fluke thing, and they're ready now. And, of course, the Saints are going to be a very different team. Peter, it's amazing to think this team didn't win its division. And I look at the NFC South right now, and I look at where the Bucs are, and I look at these other 3 teams, and there's the possibility there's going to be a gap there next year.
What was really interesting in my conversations with a bunch of Tampa Bay people this week. Okay, so Mike, remember they lost to the Saints 38-3 at home this year. And one of the things about that game that I've asked 4 or 5 people, what was Brady like the day of that, the night of that game and the next day? And Clyde Christensen, the quarterback coach, said he showed up the next day. No real sadness, no mourning, no anything other than we're good enough. We are good enough. We just have to play better. And Mike, I want you to consider a couple of things when people say, well, how do you say that after a 38-3 game? Consider a couple of things. The first time that Tom Brady got into a huddle with his offensive teammates was 28 days before the start of the regular season. Okay? The first time he had an offense-defense practice against the Buccaneers in full pads. Okay, the first time, as Blaine Gabbert told me, we had our practice on August 14th, which was the first time, which should have been our practice on May 14th, 3 months ago. But we never had an off-season program. So that's why the Buccaneers were really inconsistent. That's why Brady looked so bad on that 2-minute drill at Chicago. That's why he looked so shaky against the Giants on Monday Night Football. And they just were not very good. And I had somebody tell me that they never had a full-flung 2-minute drill, live 2-minute drill. They had practiced plays in a 2-minute drill, but never had a live 2-minute drill before that game against Chicago, which seems absurd. But that's the kind of year it was. And that's why Byron Leftwich says, hey, we're just getting good right now. It'd be unbelievable if we could play 4 more weeks.
And that success they had coming out of the bye, down the stretch in the regular season, into the playoffs, it built more and more and more confidence. Here's Arians talking to you about the confidence the team had going into a game, the Super Bowl, that they were picked to lose.
I knew we were going to win this game.
Wow. How did you know?
The way we practice, the way we've been playing. I mean, people don't give us credit, man. Our defense is good. And we don't turn it over. I mean, we went up and kicked out of Green Bay, and I knew Todd would have a great plan. After we played him the first time, we learned our lesson, and he had a great plan. They were not getting that in the end zone. He shut out Aaron Rodgers in the red zone and shut out Mahomes in the red zone.
How long did you talk to Arians after the game? What was the gap? Because I think he had a chance to hydrate a bit between the end of the game and the time he talked to you.
I'll tell you, Mike, I'll tell you what was crazy.
Have you ever heard?
Here's what was.
Go ahead.
Now, I'll tell you what was absolutely crazy about that. I asked Arians, before the game, Saturday or Sunday, I forget, I sent him a text and I said, hey, weird year and everything. I'm really going to need you after this game. And he sent me back a thumbs up emoji and a whiskey glass emoji, with brown liquid in the glass. And so, but anyway, here's what was really strange about the game. After the game, I said, oh my God, I got to try to get Todd Bowles. I mean, that defense was just incredible. I got to try to get Bowles. So I got Bowles for like 5 minutes, and I was just getting ready to ask him another question, and I looked down, and there's Arians calling me. So, hey, Todd, congratulations. Have a good time, whatever. And I clicked over to Arians right then. And so that was about an hour after the game. I would say maybe hour 10. But clearly, they had already had the on-field celebration and everything, and he was in his office at the stadium when I talked to him. But I'm assuming he had a styrofoam cup with brown liquid, but I don't know.
Could have been rum and Coke because, after all, as Bruce Arians says, rum and Coke is the drink I drink when I'm not drinking. So who knows? Either way, he deserved it that night, won the Super Bowl after a lifetime in football, finally at the top of the mountain. And you mentioned Bowles. Bowles talked to you about the defensive game plan and the motivation the defensive players had. And let's hear from Bowles, and we'll react a bit on the other side.
Both guys are young, so the biggest thing they do is read and look at TV all the time, and nobody picked us and gave us a chance to win. But they were really pissed off about that. And, combine that with the things we missed the first game and messed up. I think they were embarrassed, but they learned how to be professionals about it from the last time we played them. The biggest thing was they wanted to come out and fight. We had to give them some tools to fight with.
Do you think, all things considered, this is the best game plan and performance by a defense that you choreographed and planned in your coaching career?
Might be the best one that's worked. I thought I had some great ones that were so it might be the best one that worked thus far.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And a genius plan. And part of the problem for the Chiefs was they didn't expect it. They stepped on the rake. They went right into thinking they were going to see the same defense they saw when they ran up their 17-0 lead in Week 12, and that was not the case. But, Peter, when I saw those quotes from Bowles in Football Morning in America, the first thing I thought of was Michael Jordan, because that's the thing that I take away from the Last Dance documentary more than anything else in those 10 parts, that Michael Jordan was such a master at motivation that if he had to make stuff up, he would. And these Buccaneers players allowed themselves to think that no one picked them. Yeah, people picked them. Of course, the weight of it was on the Chiefs, but there were people who thought the Buccaneers were going to win the game. It was only a 3-point margin. This wasn't Super Bowl 36 with a 14-point wedge between the Rams and the Patriots. But you do what you have to do to get yourself whipped up into a frenzy, and kudos to the Buccaneers. They did it.
Well, the one thing that really stood out to me from both that conversation, with Bowles and with listening to some of the defensive players afterwards, they were really ticked off because they felt like nobody thought that they could learn something from that game in Week 12. And I'll tell you what they learned, okay? You do not let Tyreek Hill take over the game. That's one thing that I know that they learned. And they shifted so much defensive focus to him. And, Mike, there was a really, really important play in this game in the first half where it was about 3rd and 8. And, the Kansas City is struggling to get something going. And Patrick Mahomes is chased a beautiful throw on a little out route to Jason Kelsey. It is right in his hands. And he drops it just as he's being tackled. But that play, I think, basically gave Tampa Bay the kind of bravado, quite honestly, to essentially be saying, you guys can't take the heat. And you saw how mouthy, both teams are mouthy. Geez, Tom Brady was mouthy. And so you saw how mouthy everybody was. But that is when I believe that singular play was one of the very, very important plays in the game. Because if they convert that and get a first down and go down and score, all of a sudden, you're in the second quarter, it's a ball game. But instead, it's 21-6 at the half, and it doesn't feel like it's a ball game anymore.
Shireen Williams made an excellent point earlier this week on PFTPM. If they don't play that game in Week 12, if the Buccaneers don't have the opportunity to get blown off the field early by Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, that's what happens in the Super Bowl, right? You don't learn from that experience during the regular season. You just step right into the buzzsaw, and you're down big. And, yeah, the final score of the game was 27-24, but you fall behind 17 points to the Chiefs on the biggest stage in sports. Good luck eliminating that deficit, Peter.
The one difference is that Eric Fisher was playing then, and he wasn't playing on Sunday. And look, I actually think Mike Remmers on at left tackle played okay. He really actually played okay. It was Andrew Wiley on the right tackle who just killed him. He killed the Chiefs. And I the one thing, look, we're going to spend maybe 1 minute of this whole show talking about Kansas City, but it really surprises me that they weren't able to do anything in a 30-minute halftime to say, hey, listen, let's do something radical. Let's put a 6th offensive lineman in the game. Let's do something different. And they really didn't. Patrick Mahomes was chased all over the field in the second half, just like the first. And that is a question that I think that Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, that staff will probably struggle with if they haven't already when they put the tape of this game on, not really helping out on the right side more than they did.
5-man protection 92% of the time in the game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes, one of the most amazing stats coming out of that game, 497 yards running around behind the line of scrimmage before he threw the ball or was sacked. Second only to Week 5 when he ran around 495 yards against the Raiders, another game that the Kansas City Chiefs lost. And Mahomes obviously running around on that toe that has since been surgically repaired, which tells you, I don't care what he says after the game, it was a factor. It was an issue. That toe was bothering him, and he had to put a lot of work on top of that toe and make that toe even worse.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.